Well, a couple of things about Reed. You mentioned that you thought you were well informed when he was learning how to drive. And in fact, you mentioned how he had taken an unauthorized joyride. So you were keeping an eye on where he was driving, what he was doing, how he was driving. You were an active parent.
I was.
What were you trying to do during that time as a parent?
Yeah, I was mostly trying to make sure that he had an understanding of the basics of how to drive a car, an understanding of the rules of the road, and an understanding of at least what I thought to be the dangers of teen driving, which, as I said, I really didn't appreciate. But I certainly made the assumption, and I think most parents do, that he took driver's ed, I gave him on-the-road training, and he passed the state's test. Therefore, he's a safe driver. I think that's the assumption, the wrong assumption that a lot of parents made. So
why is that a wrong assumption?
Well, because driver's ed and again passing the test is makes you a very rank beginner at a very dangerous undertaking, and that's I think the misconception that a lot of parents have. They think, well, if the state is going to give this teenager a license, then he must be relatively safe as a driver. But that's clearly not the case. It's one of the conundrums or one of the mysteries of driver's ed is driver's ed really doesn't reduce crash rates. That's not to say it's not absolutely essential because they need to know how to drive a car, but parents should not think that because they've been through driver's ed that they are safe drivers. One way to put it is the experts say that it takes 3 to 5 years to become a relatively safe driver. So compare that with the 20 to 50 hours that most states require to get a license. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what you need to be able to call yourself in any shape or form a relatively safe driver.
And in your book, I noticed one of your comments really was essentially saying that there's no such thing as a safe teen driver.
Right.
Is that what you're talking about here?
Yes, and there are a couple of reasons for that. The most important one is that the human brain, and this is science from the last 10 years, the human brain is really not fully developed until we reach about age 22 to 25. And the last part of the brain that develops is the part that provides judgment and restraint. It has a physical part. It's called the prefrontal lobe. It's actually the front of the brain. It's the last wiring that physically comes together. And there's also a chemical element there, what are chemicals called neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin. Dopamine creates excitement. Serotonin creates restraint. Serotonin is often a sleep aid. But the teen brain is more dopamine, more gas than serotonin and brake. And this wiring isn't there. So the point for parents of teen drivers is you can give your teen 10,000 hours of training on the road. They can be a model citizen and a straight A student. It doesn't make their brain develop any faster. That's something that no parent can do anything about. It is simply a characteristic of teenagers that you have to factor in as a negative for safety. And that's really the principal reason why I say there's no such thing as a safe teen driver. In addition to what we just talked about the 20 to 50 hours versus 3 to 5 years, new drivers look at the perimeter of the car. Their goal in life is to not hit anything. And so what they don't do, and it takes a lot of experience to get comfortable with the position of the vehicle on the road so you can look down the road at the developing traffic situation, and that's what you need to be able to do to avoid a crash, is to see the developing situation and take that evasive action. Teen drivers don't do that. The last reason is that we train our teens in compact cars on familiar local streets, and then they drive pickup trucks, high-performance vehicles, SUVs on interstate highways that they've never been on before. So they're learning to navigate and to drive at the same time. Think of an adult, you go to a new city, you're looking up at the signs trying to figure out where you're going. Go back and remember what it was like to learn to drive for the first time. Combine those two, and then you start to see how very difficult it is for a new driver. And that's in the best of circumstances. Right. Then you get, those are the so-called baseline dangers. Then if there's impaired driving, distracted driving, fatigue, night driving, all the other things that elevate the risk, that's when you see the crash rates elevate significantly. And at some point you're approaching what we call a crash waiting to happen.
Well,